Hello, welcome to the Savvy. We are here to give our spoiler-filled discussion on The Suicide Squad, which is James Gunn's latest film. Kind of a soft reboot. It falls into that plane. Is it a sequel? Is it a soft reboot? It's amazing what a difference sticking the word "the" can do in a title, right? This is just night and day compared to the other one. I'm sure we'll have comparisons to the other one, but we are going to be talking about this as a standalone film. You guys actually already did a spoiler-free discussion on this thing, which unfortunately I couldn't make, but I'm here to give my thoughts on it, and we're going to talk about everything in this film. I don't know what kind of stuff you guys left out, but a lot happens in this film, and there's a lot to dissect and to talk about, and also kind of what the future of this franchise is now in the ever-convoluted world that is the DCEU, even if this is part of the DCEU. I don't know, but before we get into it anyway, over to George with the socials.
Absolutely, guys. As we said, this is a spoiler discussion, so there is no off-limit chat on this. Put your feelings in. Gutted who got killed, annoyed who got killed, or you're annoyed that they survived, all that kind of stuff. So vent all your frustration, all your praise. We'll go through everything in detail. We've got a kind of our own plan. We're going to go through the key bits of the films, give our thoughts on it as well. So that being said, hit comment. And if you do enjoy this video, hit that like button. We've now got a spoiler discussion playlist where you can find a couple of other reviews. So, we're going to get bigger films this year, so there might be a chance where we get a few more of them. So that is definitely a place worth looking at. That being said, a lot of our videos, obviously, we don't announce them, just pop up on the channel as and when. The best way to find about those coming out is getting us on our social medias, which is Facebook, Cinema Savvy, Twitter at cinema_savvy, letterboxd.com/cinema savvy, and we have a link to our TeePublic store in the description below. But as I said, we are here talking about the Suicide Squad, and it's out in the States this week, and I guess the talking point when we get to it later on actually will be about it's on HBO Max in America now. So if you are in America, you can finally see it. We got a film a week earlier than you. It's been a long time since we've had something like that. I think Tenet last year was the last time we got an early release, and guess what? We didn't put spoilers on our social media feeds. Here's a side tangent. As usual, Friday morning comes, and spoilers everywhere, right up in the morning, as they always are, as they are whenever Disney Plus shows launch. And I'm just going to go on a tirade where I'm sick and fed up of Americans that can't fucking not tweet stuff. So just pipe down, all of you. I'm going to say my piece there, because it just showed that we don't spoil things here unless we put the word spoiler discussion on a video a week later. So, yeah.
And we did do our spoiler-free discussion anyway, which everyone should go and watch for mine and George's thoughts, which is why we're going to be passing straight over to Chris, who has not given his kind of spoiler-free thoughts on it so far. So, Chris, we'll just go kind of through it quickly. What were your thoughts going in? What were your thoughts when watching the film? And then I guess we'll go from there.
Thoughts going in was kind of mixed on this one. I was interested that it was James Gunn, written and directed, enjoyed the Guardians of the Galaxy films, and knowing the kind of stuff that he makes and the humor that he's capable of, he was absolutely the right fit to direct. So I was interested to see his take on it. The trailers even just was completely different from the one that we got last time. And I know the last one, it was studio interference and trying to make it like Guardians of the Galaxy in post-production. Well, guess what? They actually got the guy that actually did Guardians of the Galaxy this time. So at least the studio knew what they wanted this time. And the fact that they were just letting a director make the film he wanted to make, that's what I was interested in. The trailers themselves, though, I was kind of lukewarm on. The humor didn't really land with me. I loved the array of characters that they had, but the actual humor within the trailer didn't really make me laugh out loud and didn't really hook me in that way. But it's a comic book film. Not only do we do, these films for the channel, but also I try and watch every single comic book film that comes out. That's just who I am. That's just what I watch. So, of course, I was off to see this one. And immediate thoughts on it. I enjoyed it. I had an absolute blast at this one. It was entertaining beginning to end. I think that in terms of the humor, some bits did make me laugh. But I think that the humor wasn't quite there. Some jokes did kind of fall flat for me. But just in terms of a visual spectacle, and as I mentioned, just letting a director make the film he wanted to make, and it shows as well. And you can tell that he is a fan of this property. I think I read that he read every single comic book, or he read a lot of Suicide comic books in the lead up to making this film. And it shows the fact that he knows all of these characters that probably only show up for one issue. I think he nailed the tone. I think he made the characters in it feel like real people, and the whole film feels weird and kind of unsettling, and that's what you want from the characters in the Suicide Squad. So I think he absolutely nailed all the core characters. There was a surprising amount of heart to it as well. I think that most of the characters had like a complete character arc in there. I think the thing that's kind of stuck with me the most, more so than the humor and like the script from it, which, as I mentioned, I think maybe could have done with another pass just to tighten things up, is just the visual look of it. There are certain scenes visually, cinematically, that have stayed with me, and I'm sure we'll talk about those as we go through the film itself. But I had a really good time with it. I don't think I'd give it like, what is it currently on, like 92% or something on Rotten Tomatoes. I wouldn't give it that high. It was just a good film for me. I don't know when I'd go and see this film again, or even if I would, but in terms of just going to the cinema, quite a packed screening as well. I'd say my showing was probably like 3/4 full, and everyone seemed to be on board with it and had a good time with it. So yeah, I guess those were my initial opinions on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to start. You mentioned visual style. I think reading into it, the opening scene is probably not the best scene in the film. Could be, but this is essentially like, if you were to take away James Gunn's name off any form of credit, any intro, if you're going to tell someone this is a James Gunn film, this is probably the scene you pick, which is Team 1 getting massacred on the beach. Mm-hmm. I should have done a Photoshop and had them all lined up on like photos of them, because I think, obviously, I don't even know how to really approach this. Should we just talk about the people that get massacred straight away in the intro? So
straight away,
because you mentioned there's been no bigger film, name change of I present to you The Fast and the Furious over Fast and Furious. I mean, that one is a lot worse than the first one, though, so we'll leave that there. But or maybe we'll get a two Suicide 2 squad next time. Who knows? But what's supposed to be out of this? If you bring in people that don't know the context of it, so I watched it again in the week with one of my sisters, and she's watched the first one. She thought it was shit. She just like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's not an easy sell to someone to do another Suicide Squad film that did the film she didn't like. And I just this one is basically a reboot. Like, the first couple of minutes will sort of show you what's going to happen. And I think the opening scene is a very smart way to get away with that stuff. Like, here's one or two faces you may remember from a previous film, but we're not going to sit there and talk about the missions they've done and the film they were on together. And we're going to probably kill, 2 of the 3 that do might get killed in the film, but killing Captain Boomerang, obviously, we'll get the same thing. But it was a very smart introductory scene. And as well, introducing you to, of course, Michael Rooker, who I think we all knew would probably die in that scene. Like, you knew someone was going to get the bomb exploded in the head, because you can't just... I don't think it's James Gunn, but someone basically... You can't explain something like that and then not do it in the film. It's something that needs to be done. So I think that was a really smart way of doing it. But just talking about the action in that opening scene, I absolutely love it. I think it was genius in the way it's kickstarting it, the other squad. The fact that the whole thing was a diversion is probably one of the best things they could have done, because it also bigs up Amanda Waller as someone that just doesn't give a shit. And I think we know that's a character, but we also know in this film that she's like, they are showing why she's evil, not just the fact that she's evil because she's head of this company, if that makes sense.
I want to add to that by saying the difference in direction and between the original Suicide Squad and the Suicide Squad, as far as the kind of Viola Davis, Amanda Waller scenes, and also the entire team she has around them. Because in the first film, it's just your bog standard kind of military room kind of scenes where they're just kind of showing her looking at things. This felt like it was filmed like a mockumentary, like with the kind of handheld steady cams and stuff like that, like showing different parts of the office and kind of people betting on it and stuff like that. It immediately throws it almost into that comedic kind of setting and that comedic style from something that is a very serious subject. I think that sets the tone so well when they actually show what's happening to the team and all of the various different deaths, ranging from completely brutal to hilarious in some circumstances. I think it just perfectly sets up the film for what kind of humor you're expecting, and is such a massive change from the original film.
Yeah, and I think it just kind of highlighted what the Suicide Squad actually is much better than the first film did. The first one, I knew what the Suicide Squad were from the comic book, so I knew the basic premise, but I don't think the first film did a very good job of kind of explaining what their deal is at all. It was just kind of like a weird, ugly, dark, murky mess of characters, and some characters only got sort of like one line. This is Katana, she's got my back. Like, that line is just infamous in just like screenwriting history, probably, of how awful it is and how just a piss poor job it did with its characters. And, I don't blame David Ayer for that at all. The studio said, we want a dark, brooding movie that ties in with Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman. Guess what? He made that film. And then they changed their mind midway through production, and that's why we get the horrible mess that was the final version of that film. But this one, you can just see it immediately, and it is a really smart way to introduce it. Immediately, they puts them in that situation, on that mission. We know what's going on, and you understand completely what the Suicide Squad is, what the stakes are, and it kind of refreshes you from the first film about the whole like devices in the back of the brain. Just lays it out completely from the first opening scene. The way the camera moves, the visuals, the color, the style of it, everything's just evident from that first scene. I will say I was really disappointed to see Captain Boomerang go so quickly. I know that he was in the trailer, and now thinking about it, obviously the only scenes that you saw of him in the trailer was where he's like scraping he's got like dog shit on his shoe, hasn't he? And he's like scraping it off with a boomerang. I was kind of upset to see him go, because I think the strongest things from that first film were Margot Robbie's casting as Harley Quinn. I didn't mind Will Smith in the film. He wasn't great, but I thought he was kind of decent. If you're going to pick anything decent from that first film, I'd say Margot Robbie, Will Smith, and Jai Courtney was a massive surprise in that film. So I actually think his character would have worked very well. It's nice that you actually get to see him in action as well. This film's so gory, and I love it because of that. I love that they don't hold back. This is so violent, even just from the opening scene. And we actually get to see Captain Boomerang in action, and I was getting into it, and it was cool, and then obviously he's just gone straight away. I applaud it on one hand because it sets the stakes that no one is safe, anyone could go. But I think that Jai Courtney was a fan favorite character, at least for me in that first film, and I'd like to have seen him develop the character more. I think he would have had some really good banter with the characters. So that was a shame, and it's a shame to see Michael Rooker go as well. But I guess we probably should have guessed he was only going to get kind of like an extended cameo in the film. The use of music as well was much better handled in this film. It wasn't just what's popular in the charts at the moment, what's the most obvious song that we can put over this scene. The musical montages and everything just worked really, really well. And I love the zany kind of offbeat, off-the-wall kind of comedy. The Detachable Man or whatever it is, absolutely disgusting. Like, I can't believe that that's a real character. Even for comic book standards, that's a stretch. So that was hilarious. The crowd loved Weasel as well. Everyone was really upset when he immediately drowned. It kind of reminded me of the Deadpool 2 scene that we always talk about that we really liked. The Task Force X. Was it Task Force X?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
whatever it is, the X-Force, whatever it was, X-Force, I can't remember what it was.
This is Task Force.
Yeah,
X,
this is just that scene played again, and it's the joke still lands the second time round for me. I love scenes like this, and I'd love that Gunn went as obscure with the characters as possible, because I think that was just a genius thing to do. Even if you just compare this opening scene to the entirety of 2016 Suicide Squad, like it's not even in the same continuity. I know it kind of is, but it really isn't at this point, is it?
No. Yeah, I think what you kind of mentioned is killing Captain Boomerang. I've seen that other film once, right? And once is enough for a lifetime. And I'm not going to get into it because it's in morons moaning online, as they always do. Release the David Ayer cut. I would like to see it, but it's never going to happen. Even less so than Justice League, because they now have a successful Suicide Squad film. So why would they detract away from that?
Yeah.
And also, James Gunn gets on. This is the other thing. James Gunn has a working relationship with David Ayer. They've done stuff on social media with each other. They credit him as well. It is nothing like Whedon and Snyder. So all forms of divide is just silly fanboyism at this point in time. But the Captain Boomerang things are interesting, because when you messaged saying you really didn't like it, they killed him. I was like, I'm going to save it for today, because I absolutely get what you mean. Because he was to me the standout from that first film, where I think it was around the time Terminator Genesis came out?
Yeah.
And I had nothing good to say. And I believe Tom Harley dropped out of that first film. It was either Captain Boomerang or Rick Flag.
It was Rick Flag. I think it was
Rick Flag. I can't remember which one out of the two. Yeah. And obviously, blessing in disguise for him. But to kill him off in the scene, I think that's when I like the term "no one's safe," because we kind of guessed heading into this that they would massacre pretty much everyone. And I think for this film, the conversation was who's going to make it out alive. And before this film came out, the only guarantee, as far as I saw, was Harley Quinn, because that is just too big of a character for them to get rid of.
Yeah.
Whereas the other film 8 was a smaller cast, but when they're telling us there's going to be all these cameos, it was like, James Gunn can get a cameo. When it's like Nathan Fillion's got a role, but it's actually him. It's like as well, Michael Rooker has a role and it's him. It's not just voice work. I I was like, we're just going to get so many people killed in the opening scene. And I think Weasel was genius to be the first one, because it was just like, I think it was the way it did. He had all this incredible super slow-mo action set pieces, and then you just get this like thump. But the best thing is, on the rewatch, I was watching Weasel before, and he was trying to back out of jumping, so it's actually really well set up on the rewatch.
Cool.
Yeah, like he doesn't want to jump out the plane as well. But I absolutely loved the whole beach sequence, and as well, I'm going to give full credits to Pete Davidson. I know he is somebody a lot of people hate, and I'm going to be the guy that says I don't mind his comedy. I wouldn't pay to watch it in person at stand-up because I saw that he makes people sign NDA, so you can't tell people if it's bad. But I liked him on SNL and when he was on the roast stuff. So when they cast him, I was like, this is perfect because he knows everybody hates him, and he's going to play it up so well. And I think Weasel doesn't count right because he lives. So there's like the fact that Pete Davidson is the first one to die, to me, is an inside joke within itself. Like, you know it was going to be him. You knew he'd never get past the opening scene, but to like shoot half his face off, I thought it was just incredible. But absolute shout out to him, because I think a lot of actors would be like, oh, people hate me, I'm not going to do a film where I pop up for 30 seconds. Whereas he's done it, so fair play.
I was going to say, like, looking at, we were talking about this in the spoiler-free one, but looking at the cast list, you can kind of look at it and look at kind of the characters that are there and go, okay, we know exactly which ones are probably not going to make it through this first scene. And as soon as Pete Davidson gets shot in the face, I was like, oh, so no one on this scene is getting out of this. Like, because I haven't seen any of the other characters who we've seen in the trailers, like King Shark, like Idris Elba, Bloodsport, and Peacemaker. You immediately go, oh, no one's getting out of this alive. I'm like, oh, does that mean that Harley Quinn's not getting out of this alive? Does this mean that Rick Flag's not getting out of this alive? And it's just so great with all these kind of characters, which are basically just thrown to the wayside. Like Javelin's Javelin lives on longer than Javelin the character does. With was it Flula Borg playing the character, Mongol, who you took one look at and you're like, yep, she's going to die a brutal death, and basically
she was awesome. I don't know anything about that character, when she just grabs the helicopter and yanking it down. She was awesome.
Is she like too heavy for it? Because the moment she jumped on, it just landed.
They mention like she's a god. Like, well, I think it's probably a character in the comic book that has like a hazy, like probably like loads of origin stories, because they mention like, I don't know if she's a god or an alien or whatever she is, but I mean, she's not. It's not even worth mentioning, really. She like yanks the helicopter down and then she's just roasted. So,
but that's going alongside the whole kind of Amanda Waller in the office going, okay, so B team, we all good? Like, just like completely calm. Everyone's like exchanging over money from kind of the bets that they knew that they wouldn't get out of there alive and shit like that. And it's just like you said, as an introduction, if you came into this film completely blind, you'd be like, oh, I kind of get why they call it the Suicide Squad now, because like Amanda Waller as a character is willing to literally sacrifice off an entire team of like B level, even Z level kind of superheroes, just to be able to get to kind of the actual main kind of focus of the mission. I think it's just absolutely fantastic. I kind of wish we didn't have to compare it back to the old film and have that kind of negative kind of thing to put up against. But if we're taking it from a blank, just straight off the start, having all of these characters, like what's his name, the detachable kid, Nathan Fillion, just go around, and the arms detach, and that's like, oh, that's disgusting. He just starts going slapping people. He doesn't even harm them. He's just there, just slapping people's faces and shit like that, and then gets kind of like, the arms get shot and stuff like that, and he's like siding.
That's my favorite bit.
Was it in slow mo?
Yeah. If his arms detached, like you'd think, oh yeah, he's not going to feel the pain on them because they've detached, but it's just like, no, he's still feeling the pain off them. He's like, on the floor. Great, excellent.
Yeah, I think this film, like going back to some of the performances as well, I forgot to mention Viola Davis, like perfect casting as Amanda Waller. Like you couldn't hope for a better person to play that character. And it's just nice to see her just get more scenes with her character and just playing it the way she does. And I think that James Gunn's really smart with how he portrays the characters, and that, you know, they are funny, they are comedic. Amanda Waller has comedic moments in the film. The bit where she gets clocked in the side of the head with like a bat towards the end of the film, and you're kind of rooting for them, like everyone in the office at that point, but he pulls no punches when you like deep dive into some of these characters. And I think every character kind of gets a moment like this as well, but especially Amanda Waller. These aren't good people, like at all. Like, these are really disturbed, twisted, horrible fucking people, including Amanda Waller. and the fact that, you know, the length that she's willing to go to get the mission done, whether it's withholding information, just letting people die, like towards the end as well. I know I'm jumping the gun, but where she says, you've done the task that we sent you out to do, just get out of there, like just let everyone die, like it's not important, we don't care about them, that the deal's done. And I love how ruthless she is, and that's what the character is. And as I said, like Viola Davis is just incredible. So it's nice to see them, the actors that they carry over from that other film, have just so much more dramatic material to work with. I'm going to save probably one of my favorite scenes later because that's in the Harley Quinn discussion, but it's the same with her character as well. I don't know if we want to talk about Idris Elba because I think it's right after this scene where his character's introduced. Watching the film, and I mean, I was conscious of this anyway, but Deadshot usually is an integral member of the Suicide Squad, right? That's why, you know, they cast him in the previous film with Will Smith. And I think his character was intended to be Deadshot, wasn't it? Pretty early on in production. They were going to recast him, obviously, with Idris Elba. And then they changed their mind midway through, and he's the character of Bloodsport now, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
But watching the film, I mean, there's the whole subplot with the daughter thing, and he's in jail. And I mean, there was the whole Deadshot in the previous film had his daughter, and she'd be kind of the right age now, I think. Maybe she'd be slightly older in this than it would be with how many years has passed since that first film. But with that daughter storyline at the forefront of his character, I don't know how late into production they were when they changed it to Bloodsport. The fact that he's got like all the guns and everything, and there's a pretty integral scene later on when he pulls the trigger and shoots at John Cena, and that's like a precision thing that it seems like only Deadshot would be able to make. So I don't know how late into it was. If it was at the beginning and they changed it, fair enough, but there was a lot of things with Idris Elba's character that seemed very Deadshot to me. But that being said, I really liked Idris Elba in the film. A lot of heart to it, especially, I mean, he gets like the final shot of the film, doesn't it? That's like the emotional crux of the film, really, is kind of him in many ways, and Ratcatcher as well. But I thought he was good. I thought he was a good lead. It's kind of Idris Elba, you know, he kind of plays the same character, especially in like action films that he's in. So he wasn't too dissimilar to what I've seen him in before. But as a lead protagonist, I liked his banter with John Cena and everyone in it. So I thought he was pretty decent.
Yeah, he's a really interesting one because, I mean, Will Smith is a really... I really like him. Obviously, you know, all the nutcase stuff from last year with his wife and stuff. Obviously, I knew he wouldn't come back. And the way I'd imagine it, I couldn't imagine Will Smith... I mean, this might sound really nasty to Will Smith, but I couldn't imagine Will Smith in a James Gunn film. I don't know. I mean, he's got so much charisma. Maybe it's just because I've not seen it for such a long time. I know he's got the Oscar film coming out this year about the Williams sisters, so that might be maybe why filming didn't happen and whatnot. But it's a really interesting one that, you know, if they wanted to kill him, he'd be dead, right? And that's the only thing I can imagine about this film is that if they wanted to use him, they would have. And I wonder if there's something down the line where they might think, but no, you're bang on that, Chris, that the whole bullet at the end, the John Cena stuff, and I didn't know anything about Bloodsport. I do love the suit though. That was really a really cool thing. I read some of that. Yeah, the mask looked sick. It was the whole like school thing, and I was reading that they had to actually design the suit so Idris Elba could take out the hatches, and apparently it was an absolute nightmare to film with, but it all worked so that they could actually get it to, well, obviously they didn't actually have real gadgets attached to it, but yeah, it's Idris Elba being Idris Elba, isn't it? You can't... I think he's a solid action lead at this point in time, that, you know, he's had more leading roles, but he does work better in an ensemble, and I think he's better leading an ensemble than an individual film. Saying that, Beast Nation is outstanding, and it should have been an Oscar nomination, but I think he was the right person to lead this. I think the only other one, I mean, if you look at all the marketing, everything, right, it's all been Bloodsport, Peacemaker, and Harley Quinn, and then slightly smaller, you know, we've got Ratcatcher, King Shark, and the others, but I'm glad that he led this rather than Harley, because I really liked Birds of Prey. And I love this film, but I don't think she'd have worked as a leader of the Suicide Squad type character. I think she worked perfectly in a supporting role within it. And I can't take this, I've not read them, but apparently not comics as well. She never led the Suicide Squad. She was always a member of the team. But it's a really interesting one going for him. But I think, you know, each character of Squad 2, the ones that are alive, everyone has a story arc, which, you know, it might sound quite rare, but when you think about Guardians, right, look at Guardians 1, every character had a story arc in that film. And I think they all had a payoff. You know, Groot, Rocket did. Obviously, Chris Pratt did have the biggest pair for all of them. But everyone had a story arc and they worked. And obviously, they extended upon some of them in that second film. But in this, I felt the same way. that they would take. I mean, it's really, you know, I'm bored of saying, you know, oh look, he made a talking tree a character and it worked. But as far as I'm concerned, he's done it again. Polka Dot Man, like when that's the kind of guy you wouldn't expect to come out that first scene alive. But when he clocked him on Martin, I was like, he's gonna have a big role in this. I knew he'd die still, but I was like, he's gonna get near the end, and that was one of my main predictions, and it came true. But I just sit here sort of looking at that cast list, and even King Shark had a bit of a character arc that he was like lonely and he was the only shark, and I felt sorry for him. And it was just amazing, sort of going down it one by one, all of them, and they all had payoffs to a point. Obviously, King Sharks was more for comedy with the little squidgy things that then tried to eat him. But it's a really interesting one. And I think, again, I'm not going to say only James Gunn can write it, but when we're looking at comic book films now, he's directed 3. You know, he's going to do Guardians of the Galaxy next, the 3rd one. He's going to do the holiday special. And I know we'll probably speak about him, but DC said they want him back, and he's kind of hinted that he's going to come back for a DC film. Didn't say Suicide Squad, which is a really interesting conversation. And I'm just sitting here wondering, saying that maybe this is a completely off topic, but I just think he gets comics. Like, you know how Kevin Feige, right? He just gets how to do it all with Marvel. He just understands the process and how to make it work. I think James Gunn is essentially the director version, where he can take whatever comic he wants, and I think he can make a great film of it, because he not only respects the source material, but he's clearly a fan of it, and he knows how to take that and make it accessible for mainstream audiences, which a lot of people can't do. So, on a side piece, looking at the second Suicide Squad team, you know, all fun and well, having the laughs, having everyone die in that first scene, because that is very funny. It's very well done, but it's a smart way for him to bring in that second team, and to, if he wants to kill one off, he can, because it's a shock moment, because they've had more development. And I think there's a bit of genius in his writing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I want to say that what they've done here with the team is they've collected together kind of these characters that all have something slightly different. And I think that's why it works as kind of a Suicide Squad team. Like, obviously, you've got Bloodsport, who is that kind of direct replacement for Deadshot. I'm wondering how much the influence of change was that how similar a character Bloodsport is to Peacemaker, and having those kind of jokes and that rivalry built into it. Because it feels like that rivalry is kind of streaking all the way through the entire film, from like the attack on the base all the way through until pretty much the finale, where kind of Starro's being kind of introduced and they're having to fight over kind of the records and stuff like that. Like, that feels like it's very integral. I'm not sure whether that would have worked in the same way with Deadshot, because slightly different skill sets between them, so you can't have that direct comparison in the same way. I know there are some things that may have been written in that kind of would have had a payoff, or maybe they would have changed it slightly. But that kind of rivalry is integral to not only part of the kind of comedy of the film, but also just the actual film progression in itself, especially towards the finale, where kind of people start to choose sides. Apart from that, you've got Ratcatcher, who is kind of the person who can't really do any wrong, almost the innocent party in this. You can't really see her as a villain, if that makes sense, within the Suicide Squad. We weren't really given any kind of negative context for her as to why she was locked up, other than she was different and she held the technology that her father made, who was definitely a villain. You got Polka Dot Man, who I was aware of before the film. Love his character and the fact that is kind of, it's very, very out there and stuff like that. I believe they slightly changed his origin story, but I'll need to check up on that again. But they kind of made it in a way that it would work for the film. And then, of course, you got King Shark as well added on to that. And it's just such a big kind of dysfunctional family. And is this the year of the family films, like where family gets spammed and overused and stuff like that?
John Cena connects them all so far.
But honestly, the way that kind of James Gunn's able to work these kind of relationships and these kind of band of misfits into a film, whether it's a band of misfits that gets killed off instantly or a band of misfits that pretty much make it all towards the end together as a team, it's excellent. He is a writer who absolutely gets it. I think you absolutely nailed it in your assessment there, George, kind of talking about how he approaches kind of these films and how he approaches I guess the actors and kind of getting them into their roles and just making the entire universe work. And he said he's back for another DC film. I'd love for it to be another Suicide Squad film, but honestly, the way that he's able to weave these films in together, I genuinely would just watch it anyway. Doesn't matter what film he puts out.
Yeah, I really liked the ensemble of characters in this one. It's almost like a completely random lineup, which I guess is kind of like the Suicide Squad's history. I'm sure it's gone through many hundreds, thousands probably of iterations in the comic books of the initial lineup that they've got. But on paper, it's not really. If you were like going to cast like a Suicide Squad, bar Harley Quinn and maybe King Shark, I don't think it's the team that anyone would put together. And I think that was really smart because not only has it introduced everyone to, brand new characters that maybe they've never heard before, but we know, for example, that Peacemaker's getting his own TV show, which they confirmed ages ago. So they knew that that character had legs. I actually was surprised with where they ended his character in this film. It wasn't the path that I thought his character was going to go down at all. I thought he was going to be like this happy, jovial, wacky kind of character that probably does murder everyone in his path in the name of peace and justice in the American way. But by the end of this film, he's kind of like a character from The Boys in many ways. Like he's almost, he kind of is a villain role towards the end of this film in many ways.
Chris, they're all villains.
No, but you know what I mean. They're kind of for the most part, a lot of them are anti-heroes in terms of how it functions in the film. But he's like full-blown villain at the end, which is not where I expected John Cena's character to go at all. But yeah, I loved his back and forth. Some of the best jokes in the film probably were from Peacemaker. Even if it's just a visual gag, the scene where he's just in tighty whities just randomly and he's just stood there is just hilarious. Honestly, I think my favorite character out of the lineup was Ratcatcher 2, and I think that she had one of the best performances in the film. Daniela Melchior, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I think her having that emotional beat in the actual finale fight and kind of ultimately saving the day, really, it's all down to her. I love the way she played it and the moments where she's talking about her upbringing and her father, who's played by Taika Waititi. I really like that scene as well. It all came together. Yeah, I think the reason they say that she was locked up was that she was done for armed robbery because they counted the rats as a weapon, essentially. So I think that's why she was locked up initially, which kind of sounds. I don't know why she'd get locked up specifically there, with all the other people that are of that caliber that actually murder everyone.
Is it because she has the powers? Like I know
maybe,
that
the
put
tech,
Superman
probably
in the ICU, but maybe it's just because of the tech.
And you got like Polka Dot Man as well, who I think is a Batman villain. I'm not sure. I swear in like the old school comic books.
The Flash, was he not?
He might be. They probably like use him in everything. But as far as I know in the comic books, all he does is literally throw. I thought it was paper polka dots at people. I don't know what he does. But in this, they make him like vomit out polka dots and it's this horrible, like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing. And the whole Oedipus complex thing with his mom, that was really uncomfortable. That was James Gunn through and through, wasn't it? And everyone was kind of squirming in their seats during all those moments in the cinema, myself included. And King Shark as well. I was kind of hesitant at first, but then I know that King Shark as a character in the comic books has gone through loads of different versions. Sometimes he's like super intelligent. Sometimes he's really fearsome. Other times he's kind of like a dumb character that can only muster a few words. But there was real heart to him. And it's in the moment when he says that he doesn't have any friends. It was like a pantomime. Everyone in the audience was like, oh. And one of my favorite scenes actually is a King Shark scene. And it goes to the sort of like the style and the music. The bit where he's looking in the tanks at like the weird little things that eventually try and eat him. I kind of wanted that scene to play out a little bit longer just because it was so beautiful and the music and I loved what was happening. And then I was like terrified afterwards when they were like piranhas and I thought King Shark was going to die. It's like there's blood torrents coming out when they're all biting into him and I was worried. I thought King Shark was gone and that would have absolutely mortified me. So I'm very glad that he lived to tell the tale at the end of the film.
I think with King Shark, the best thing, because the bit that sells the whole thing with it, right? You've got this great character setup, you've got these great moments, but it's the voice of Sylvester Stallone that I think that finished it. It's the, if anyone follows him on Instagram, he just does granddad jokes now, and it's really cute. And I can just imagine, like, I've seen him do a lot of press. There was some where they were like, there were fans that thought they'd gone up to do a DC trivia game, and then it was actually a junket, and the whole cast came on Zoom with them. And on one of them, like, there's this person that starts crying because it's Stallone that comes on. It's not the others they're bothered by. And it's just, he seems really happy in the role when I've seen him talking about it. And it's probably like a day in the studio, if that. But the fact that he's over, and he has been cast in Peacemaker as a human character, I'm very excited to see that. So the Peacemaker,
of course, he was in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 as well, wasn't he?
He's
remembered. Yeah.
He's apparently he's really good friends with James Gunn. So I mean, it's a bit of a no-brainer. If they can do him in humour form, then you can bring in Stone. He's got 2 roles, but I think this is a bit of therapy. This film, because the favour of sharks still exists, but I took a liking to a shark character. And Chris, I need to ask you. I never spoke about it. Your phobia of rats, and Ratcatcher 2's come out as one of your favourites as well.
So I'm not that bothered by CGI rats. If it was real rats, if they'd have used a lot more practical ones, then yeah, my feet would have been up off the floor. I'd have been like sitting in my chair in the cinema. It would have been horrible. But I don't think I'd have the turnaround that Idris Elba does at the end of this film. I think I'd still have that one rat was cute though, when it was like offering the leaf. It's still a rat though, and I don't like him. But no, it didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. So that was nice.
Sorry, we've just got a comment in. We might be jumping around a little bit, but I did want to kind of bring it up. We've got a few actually from T3074. I was really surprised by all the deaths and gore. I was happily surprised by that, because I think the first film was a bit too PG, with kind of the deaths being turned into weird kind of monster kind of
12A, wasn't it?
Dying. Yeah. So having it's a film called Suicide Squad. You're not exactly making it 12A just doesn't work. You need it to be a bit more kind of violent and gory and stuff like that. And I find it out of character for Amanda Waller to get knocked out by her staff and then there aren't any consequences.
Yeah, that was weird.
I wanted to bring this up because in the first film, and this is bringing context back to the first film, Rick Flag and Harley Quinn and I guess Captain Boomerang all go against her orders in that film. And there are no consequences from that. They go against her orders. They kind of complete the mission instead of kind of abandoning it and stuff like that. And guess what happens? They all get sent to the beach as part of Squad A, as in the actual Suicide Squad, the people who are there as a decoy to be killed.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah. So I think if this continues on, there will be consequences given to any of the characters. I think it's kind of one of those, oh, you've kind of won me this time, but I will absolutely get you back in the future by putting you on an actual suicide mission instead of kind of the Task Force X kind of job. So I think that kind of cleans itself up from the first film. But in doing so, you would have to link it back to that first film.
I think it was more so the people in the office, like the ones that actually knocked her out. I thought she was going to like kill them all. It was weird that there wasn't a scene that kind of tied that bit up at the end. I know that you're getting towards the end of the film. You need the outro. You needed to end on a high note, but that did seem a little bit out of character. It felt like there was a missing scene. Like they needed to address that with the kind of volatile character that Amanda Waller is.
Chris, wait for the Peacemaker series where his first mission is literally to kill everyone in the office.
That's what I think they'll probably do. That's what the credit scene said as well, didn't they? That this is clearly her revenge at us. But if they're all going to come back for Peacemaker, then do it, because speaking of John Cena as a good transition point, it's one of the probably the funniest scene. I mean, it's not even a funny scene, but the Rebel base attack, I think, gave one of the best sort of not one-liners, but what would you call it? It's like a punchline. That's it. The whole setup, kill everyone without prejudice. And you've got this brilliant, here's King Shark eating someone whole. Here's everyone showing their powers. And here's the standoff with Idris Elba and John Cena about who's better at killing people, topped off with Polka Dot Man at the end. And that was a genius way to bring them all into it, show how good they are, and to then just get Rick, because you knew Rick Flag was going to be fine as well. We could have imagined that. Yeah. But it's the moment where she turns and goes, how come I didn't hear anything? And then they all just do that awkward look and King Shark spits the finger out. I think just that moment is one of the funniest scenes of the year. Just so on the rewatch with it, it was even funnier because that everyone getting killed is essentially on their side and innocent. Mm. But if you're going to just show two people, like, it's a bit like, again, bring some more James Gunn's back of Guardians. Do you know how you've got sort of Rocket versus Chris Pratt, who's the bigger person, who's the leader of the team, which they joke about like in the first and second film. And it's kind of like this with John Cena, that we can go into knowing John Cena's getting a show, and I kind of went into. I mean, obviously, the wrestling background, I absolutely love him. More for jumping into film stuff and seeing what he wants to do. But I think this was like the role he was born to play, and that scene where those two were just going at each other. Like, I think it's not really funny, but the best kill of all of it is just the guy asleep in the bed, and he's got the axe, and he just walks by chopping at him. And it's so like dark humor, funny. I don't know if anyone here has seen Super, one of James Gunn's earlier films. Now, I didn't like that when I saw it. That was many years ago. and I'd be tempted to give it a rewatch after watching Suicide Squad. But the humor in this film feels like it's darker humor of his sort of older films, more so than his more modern Marvel stuff. And again, like it's really rare we say fair play to Warner Brothers, but they let a director make a film, and look, you get a good film from it. Who would have ever imagined that possibility? But the whole sequence of the killing of everyone, I think you got a great one-liner as well when using words like when dope as fuck's normally really cringy, but I think the way in which John Cena does it, and it's like, he's just to show off, is like not when it's dope as fuck. I think that's one of the few times where I've heard line like that work. And I think that scene is probably, I think it's my favorite scene from the film, but it's definitely up there. And I think a lot of it's done in like long takes as well, which is always something I love seeing.
It's just kind of the fantastic escalation of the scene where it starts very small with just kind of a simple kind of shot. And then you get into the axe bit, and then they just show off, and it is a dick waving contest. And it's great that you've already set up the characters from the scene of kind of Amanda Waller kind of introducing Bloodsport to his team that he's going to be looking after. And they go basically of the joke of, oh, he's got exactly the same set of skills as you, when they're kind of introducing. He goes, wait, what do you mean? What? Like, it's brilliant that kind of pays off a little bit later on with the whole kind of arguments about there being smaller bullets and stuff like that, and the different kind of gadgets they use. And then Polka Dot Man gets involved, and then Ratcatcher kind of does. I can't remember Ratcatcher whether she gets involved or not, but like all of them kind of show off their skills, show off their powers, show what they can do. It's a brilliant introduction to all of them, and then it's just paid off with that kind of, you were killing innocent people in the end, which perfectly shows off once again what the Suicide Squad is. It's a bunch of villains that are being asked to do a hero's job, and how butchered and kind of how messy it can get in that sense, because they don't care about civilian casualties. They only care about the mission because that gets some sentence time off. There's no, oh, I'm doing this for kind of freedom and justice and to save people. It is a kind of personal thing of, I'm doing this so I can get less time in prison kind of motivation that kind of expels from this entire team. So it's just a brilliant scene played out to kind of introduce them in kind of and integrate yourself fully into that world.
You mentioned you can't remember if Ratcatcher kills anyone in that scene. If memory serves, she actually gets one of the most horrific kills.
Oh, does she?
I think she sends like a bunch of rats and they like crawl down someone's throat. Like it's horrible. That's probably the worst death out of all of them, in all honesty. This
Not
whole scene was
missed, and then
yeah. This whole scene was like one of my favorites from the movie. It's easily one of the most memorable for me. I love kind of jokes like this where it kind of it makes you think back to the previous scene that's just happened. It's like a horrific like misfortune or like circumstances have changed or something. But I love the scene where she was just like, they were all the rebels, and you're just like, you remember how gory some of those kills were. Loved it. I thought it was one of the best jokes in the film, and I actually think that tone and that style of filmmaking, I like this film. I do like the third act. We'll get onto it later when we talk about Starro the Conqueror and everything, but I feel like something was lost a little bit towards the end, and it kind of turned into almost like generic big CGI monster thing that we've got to take down, which is kind of how a lot of superhero films go. I love the style and filmmaking take on the more sort of like low budget stuff. A lot of this film felt really low budget. I don't know what the budget for this thing actually was. I imagine it was quite high for the CGI later on in the film.
185.
Yes, it's quite high then. I mean, it's probably not as high as a lot of comic book films usually are, but even that, I love the sort of like the more, you mentioned Super, and it felt a lot like that, where it is a superhero film, but it felt much more low key. It almost felt like not a student film. I don't mean to say that, but limitations essentially in the filmmaking. Like, we don't need that crazy budget. Let's just, the costumes in this thing look like Halloween costumes, for God's sake, and that just makes it so great. Like the fact that, what do they say, that Peacemaker looks like he's got a toilet seat on his head or something, and he's wearing like a red vest and like this like crappy plastic metal thing on his head or something. So I loved all that stuff, but then I think towards the end it kind of lost that a little bit when it went into like the big CGI punch 'em ups and over the top action scenes and everything. So it's kind of a double whammy for me, because I did like the ending, and I love that we get Starro as the main villain, Project Starfish. I thought that was hilarious, but I kind of wish that they'd have continued that kind of filmmaking style like into the ending somehow. Yeah.
It's the John Cena thing. I really want to quickly bring up, because I'm not going to not bring up one of my favorite lines. There's many great lines in this film, but one of the funniest ones, it's the Twitter insult that all the older people say. It's because when Ratcatcher's asleep in bed and he just turns, he's the last one, it's like millennials, and then walks out. and I took a liking. It's like, like when you get the old people on Twitter that don't know what they're doing, like all the boomers. It's just like one of their replies. I think it's just so funny that there was something and sort of going on a side piece because he's getting his show, as we know. But we spoke about like Fast 9 being like that could be his breakout. The Rock broke out in a Fast and Furious film to make it A-list. I think this is John Cena's. The fact that James Gunn has filmed a show already, it's not like, we're going to make it. It's done. It's dusted. It's coming out next year. And that was before this had even been released for press to look at. They could all hate Cena. They've already spent the money on a film, on a show for him. So I've got mad respect for them. Obviously, they would have been press the high-ups with it. And I think you know what you're going to get with James Gunn now as well. But the costumes you mentioned were great. And another John Cena shot was that he wore it in every single TV appearance he did promoting the film. And the red carpet was in LA last week. And you've got the whole cast in their suits and everything. And John Cena just turned up as Peacemaker. And can you imagine if you go to a film premiere as a fan and then like John Cena's there in the costume? Apparently he took photos and signed for every single person that was there. And there's an amazing photo of the cast did like a group selfie. They're all smiling, and then he just pulls like a proper miserable face in it. But he said apparently he'd wear it 24/7, and he's basically been doing it. He'd walk down the streets of LA as well. So I think when you get things like that on the side, it's a credit to the film that you've got the people that, and this goes to James Gunn again, he feels like he's an actor's director, that everyone he works with has nothing but good things to say about him. You don't ever get the cast coming out saying XYZ happened on set, or I'm not coming back, I don't like working with him. You look at what happened when the whole Disney Marvel thing kicked off and Disney made Marvel sack him. And it was the entire cast that wrote the letter for Marvel to Disney to rehire him. And you look at this film again with that they all feel like they're like happy to be working with him. And I think that's such a rare thing. Like, yeah, it's easy to sign a contract for a film, but it seems like he's the biggest selling point of the film. And the fact that the trailers didn't say director of Guardians, I know they wouldn't want to, but the fact that it said a James Gunn film now, and I think he's slowly reached that stage where they've all got his back. And I'd imagine, I've just looked at the cast for the film next year. The guy that motion captured King Shark's going to be in the show, whether that's a human role or coming back as King Shark, I don't know. But you've also got the T-1000. Is it the T-1000 from T2? The one that goes from metal? Robert Patrick.
Patrick, yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
So
that's cool.
it's got quite the cast. So I'm excited to watch it, but sort of going back to this one with it is great. But I'm with you on that third act. What it feels like, very comic booky, but also it looks like a comic book, and that's also a praise of it. That it's. I mean, could you imagine Zack Snyder's Starro? Like it would be like it'd be like nighttime, right? It'd be like a deformed starfish. This was just literally a giant starfish with an eyeball, and it looked fucking great because it was a giant starfish with an eyeball. And sometimes the simple way to make something is the best way to do it. And it's so comic booky, it's so big third act, but I will take a giant starfish walking around the city for no reason over 90% of the crap endings we do get to a lot of other comic book films where must have 100 ships come in, must have the explosion and the final fight. Whereas this is like, we're going to follow that gimmicky thing, but it's a starfish. And I think they build up to it naturally, that we know about the project. And obviously, I think you mentioned to me or someone did that they'd have loved it if the trailers never showed Starro. I'm the exact same now, I've seen it. That would have been an incredible unveiling that the villain was just a giant starfish. And I'm sad the trailer did that.
Mm-hmm. But I know this film has Peter Capaldi in it. It does feel like a incredibly high budget Doctor Who monster, just of how silly it is. Like, especially with the starfish kind of sucking onto people's faces and kind of the way it talks, and then everyone kind of flops off like zombies. It genuinely feels like when he was writing it and when he was coming up with the idea, he must have been pissing himself laughing. He's like, for this finale, we're going to have like an army of people with starfishes on their faces and then a giant purple starfish like crushing an entire city. Like, that's basically how he probably pitched it. And it just comes off so ridiculously silly. But because they've done the kind of legwork in the first place to set up the entire kind of universe around it and have that comedy built in, it worked so well as a finale. Like, it works so much better than all of the other DC finales have done with their villains and stuff like that, which almost takes itself too seriously for its own film. Whereas this, it's a silly film. It knows it's a silly film. It's going to have a silly villain at the end. It's not going to be the kind of dictator who is kind of the final boss they have to face and stuff like that. No, it's going to be the giant purple space starfish. that is kind of crushing the city and kind of speaks through people and kind of screams with them in unison and shit like that. It's going to be that kind of levels of silly, and the squad's going to kind of, I think, was it Idris Elba's line was like, huh? When it just kind of sees it kind of walk off towards the city. It perfectly spells it. It's just like, it's so good.
I'll talk about Starro in just a second. I wanted to sort of like mention some of the other villains because I do think this is probably one of the negatives that I have with the film. I think this film has a villain problem. Talking about Capaldi first, I love Capaldi. Like, the thick of it, like, he's hilarious. In Doctor Who, great actor, but you could tell he felt really restrained. So it was nice to see him sort of like get material that is a little bit more adult, akin to something that you get in the thick of it. But I don't feel like they did much with his character. I don't feel like I got a good sense of his character. And I think that getting someone like Capaldi looking the way he did as well, where he almost looks like Pinhead from Hellraiser, I just felt like it was a bit of a waste. I think that's probably one of the biggest negatives I have with the film. On top of that character, other than him, really, you just have like a couple of no-name army generals, you know, of the leaders of Quarter Maltese. I do love that they used Quarter Maltese, by the way, which is from the comic books, The Fictional Nation. So that was great that they used that. And what was with this film's fixation on birds? Like, does James Gunn really fucking hate birds? A little cute songbird gets taken out with a squash ball at the beginning. An entire cage full of birds gets torched in this film. So I don't know if James Gunn has like a massive fear of birds or something. And this was like his catharsis of being able to kill them all.
So in films, I guess birds are the symbolism of freedom. So being stuck in the cage and having to kill the bird, and then kind of the freedom of the country being kind of wrapped up by the birds, by the family, and then being torched is kind of the bringing down of the previous regime. I think
there's a lot of bird killing in this film.
I think it's
like
film
symbolism
language.
aside.
I don't think it's anything past symbolism or but like kind of film language and stuff like that.
The John Cena poster for the film was white doves with him walking through them, which I wish we could have seen as well.
That's
Very
if John Woo
Mission
directs
Impossible
the next
2,
one. Yeah. But Starro, I just want to talk about Starro. I thought was genius. Absolute genius to have that as the final villain, because it's both completely ridiculous, and I didn't know anything about Starro. You click Starro, you look on Wikipedia, you look on Google. It is literally a giant cosmic starfish that floats through the stars. That's it. There's probably more to the character, but it's just, you see shit like that and you just kind of roll your eyes and just go, only in a comic book, right? But I love that he was able to take that and that Warner Brothers were cool with that, and that's your giant kaiju villain at the end. I think someone even mentions that we've got a kaiju up in this bitch or something, I think they say, don't they? So I love that. But also, I thought it was terrifying. So it was kind of genius. Like, it's hilarious. We've got like a giant purple starfish that stamps, tromping through a city, and it's ridiculous. But the way that they made it was terrifying. It was almost like it was really Lovecraftian. It was like Cthulhu, like this cosmic entity that's so beyond the realm of human perception that it's terrifying, and its voice. And I think mostly it was like the henchmen, right? It was when these starfish were like the face huggers from Alien, and you see people in the cages and they were operating on them, and I think one had taken the starfish off and it was like this star shape. It like buried into someone's face. That was terrifying. So I think that the way they built him up worked, but also, and it's that great balance again that I mentioned with like James Gunn, where he can have, balanced comedy with seriousness, still have heart in it, have a completely ridiculous starfish bad guy as your main villain at the end, but also kind of make it, I think, as probably as scary as you can make a giant purple starfish in your ending. I think he did it well. The spacecraft footage as well. And I actually quite liked the final line that Starro has as well. I can't remember it exactly, but he mentions missing the endless stars, looking at the stars as he's dying, and I thought that gave him so much character as like this giant cosmic starfish. But
what was it? I was happy floating alone in space.
Yeah,
like that.
I loved that. Loved it.
Didn't realize until just now. Voiced by Tayte.
Was it? Oh, okay, that's cool.
It's as you said, because it is very tragic when it's like, very. I mean, this film. I'm not saying this film's anti-American, but a lot of this film is obviously a commentary on politics, and obviously it felt, let's say, Quarter Maltese fiction. Let's be honest, guys, it's Cuba, right? It's basically meant to be Cuba, and I love what they were doing. The running joke of you are the presidente now, and then they get killed, and it's like, you are the new president. Like, I love the running joke of killing all the new dictators, but the Starro stuff's great because it shouldn't work. It's bonkers. I think comic wise, was it the Justice League's first ever comic villain or something? So, to put that in a film, you've got some deep comic lore, and to convince the the higher ups to let you put it in a film as well. So again, it's just one that only James Gunn could do it right, and I think it just added that sort of tragedy to it when you do realize that, because what did it do that's villainous? It just broke free. Like it was just walking around, and what's it meant to do? But it's one of them where I absolutely love it. It is very generic, very sort of CGI heavy, which I don't mind. Obviously, it did kill one of the main cast, and poor old Polka Dot Man getting his. I mean, you knew he was going to go with that. The moment the leg goes and he screams,
"Yeah,
I'm a superhero," and you just get that. It's going to happen. The moment the shot is him on the horizon, eyes out with the forefront, they just squash him. What a way to go! And then you get like a little. Do they get like a bit of his costume at the end? Like they've got like fabric, a rip of it left, and it's just so funny. But I love Starro. I mean, like I said, it's an interesting villain because I think so much the forefront has been on the war stuff, the politics of it, the fact that it was, the Capaldi thing. Going back to what you said, Chris, so this is what I was trying to get towards. My biggest problem with the film is probably Capaldi, and I don't mind him in the film, but I think they don't use him properly. And I think you get the shouty Malcolm Tucker moments at the end. But the moment they step foot in that base, like he's very funny. There's the scene at the strip club when like he's walking through the back and there's like the naked people, and he just like turns around, he starts smiling at them, getting all excited. And you just mentioned about the rat up his ass joke as well, where it's like how do you know my answer wouldn't be different? And he's very funny, but I thought, because I don't know much about the history, I thought like he controls the starfish. That I thought like he is the go-to. They've got to stop him. He is the main villain. He's like I don't know, what's that thing in Marvel? It's not a villain, it's the Watcher, isn't it? That he is the puppet of everything. And he just wasn't. He was just this random dude in a tracksuit for half the film. And I think he was a bit wasted, but maybe that's the point of it. But we were so close to a Malcolm Tucker outburst. We got bits of it, but he was good from what we had. I just don't think we had enough of him. And I think they marketed him a lot more than some of the other characters as well, which was a shame. But his death was awful as well. Awful as in ripped apart and then thrown against a window, and there's the whole like sound effect of like a window cleaner as well. Absolutely, like I said, we just didn't get enough of him. And as I said, he looked incredible in the makeup, but he like neocortex and all that sort of stuff. And then to get him for like probably 5 minutes screen time, if that.
Yeah. And for a character that's called the Thinker, we didn't actually get to see him do much thinking.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing on the Wikipedia here that he's a metahuman, which basically means he does have the power, and I think his power is kind of like thinking and tactics and kind of really kind of intelligent and stuff like that, hyper intelligent. But we never actually got to see him do anything past that. Like we never got to see him kind of use his power to any advantage at all. We just kind of have the background stuff of he did the research, and that was kind of enough for you to know. And he did say that he can communicate with the Starfish, or with Project Starfish when it was being called that, and he was the only one who could really control it. That's why he couldn't be killed by the Malta Cortez. But at the same time, like we never actually got to see the character do anything in that sense. And whether it was just because it's like, oh, you thought he was puppeting the Starfish, actually he is just a puppet in place for the Starfish when the villains kind of switch over. But I mean, I didn't mind Peter Capaldi. I think he always blows out of the water with every performance he does. Like even in some of the terrible episodes of Doctor Who that have been written for him, he was always the best thing in those episodes. Like he's just a phenomenal actor in anything he's put in. But maybe it would have been nice to see a bit more of kind of his character put forwards and stuff like that. Other than that, we do get other kind of villains coming in and out of the film. We have the various different dictators. I think the most memorable of the dictators being the one that gets with Harley Quinn, I guess, in that kind of really weird sequence, which didn't feel like it fitted into a Suicide Squad film until the moment where Harley Quinn kills him. And then you're really like, oh, back to reality. We're definitely in a Suicide Squad film, or we're definitely in a brutal film. But other than that, I do feel like I agree with you. There is a slight villain problem with this film. Up until the point where Starro kind of takes the show towards the end, it does feel like it's oh, he's the puppet now. Oh, no, wait, no, he's in charge now. The focus on him. Oh, now it's there. It's just like, I wish that they kind of streamlined it with one person that everyone's aiming for, but then they do the bait and switch at the end and then go to Starro.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There is another scene we can talk about as well, which kind of, I think we've gone all over the place with this thing, but the one correlation between this film and the first Suicide Squad film is that the best scene in the film, or one of the best character moments, is in a bar. It's a bar scene. And I love that this film would just take a step back and just let the characters be themselves and just have those moments. The bit where Ratcatcher is speaking with Idris Elba on the bus right before the bar scene, I really enjoyed as well. And you don't get that in a lot of comic book films now. Now it's just kind of, let's get the action and just, plot points, boom, 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 boom. But this one actually let its characters breathe, and they just felt like real people, real characters. That bar scene just felt so genuine and real when they were getting the round of drinks in, so I enjoyed that. We've talked about a lot of the characters. We haven't really talked much about Harley Quinn, so I think that's probably a good jumping off point when you talked about the dictator scene there. Margot Robbie casting as Harley Quinn, even since the first Suicide Squad film, perfect casting. I don't think you could get anyone better in that role, in my opinion. The problem that I've had with Harley Quinn is the way that she's been written. She's been written absolutely awfully. I mean, I didn't like Birds of Prey. It was considerably better. Well, not considerably. It was a better film than Suicide Squad, but I still had the same problems with the character. They kind of just made her like the ditzy bimbo, and I know that Harley Quinn has been written that way in the comics before, but it feels like you're losing a lot of the depth of the character. There's so much that you can get from Harley, and I don't feel like any film has gone that way. I think the closest thing that's done it is Batman the Animated Series, and that was predominantly made for kids, which is like almost unthinkable that the live action films haven't gone there. I think this is the best she's been written out of her 3 appearances in all the films, and I think she's not perfect. The character's not where I'd like it to be, but the one scene that took it for me, and it's probably my favorite character scene in the film, was where they almost got Harley Quinn right, and her psychology about things was where she shoots the dictator, which is, it's played for laughs and it's funny because Harley Quinn's a funny character, but she's kind of verbalizing everything that's going through her head and sort of like convincing herself that what she's done is right. And it's this really twisted way. You could imagine like a real life murderer being like that. Like they've just killed someone. They're watching them bleed out on the floor and they're kind of verbalizing everything, like their weird sense of logic. It's like, oh, you're going to hurt me and you're going to do this and you've done terrible things, as she's just killed someone and watching them die on the floor.
I draw the line at killing babies or whatever it was.
Kids.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that was like kind of chilling was where when he finally dies, she says, you're better this way or something, or you look more peaceful this way. I can't remember what she says. It's like the final line that she says.
It's like, you're better this way with all those bad thoughts out of your head. Which is like literally like,
because it's so warped and it's so creepy, and I think that that's the closest that it's got to sort of like getting in the mindset of Harley Quinn and how twisted she can be. It's not where I want the character to be compared, because there's a lot of history with the character that I felt like they've missed out on, and they kind of glossed over it in like 10-second fiber optic montages in the first Suicide Squad film. I know that footage exists somewhere.
What was
the
it?
whole
She
like
was
therapy
his queen.
session. But
this is my problem. No, this is what I'm going to jump with you. The reason why we're missing something is because the character's essentially got one arm behind her back from minute 1 of being covered in tattoos. I know it sounds really odd, but by making, obviously, she's associated with the Joker, you can't have Harley without the Joker. They're making Harley without the Joker because we need to eradicate that Joker.
No, yeah.
And this is because I really, really like Birds of Prey, but when you take that film and strip it down, it's having a solo film. She's broken the Joker and she's trying to move on. And it's the fact they had to have a film because they want to be disassociated with that Joker is so odd. Like, fair play. Because, I think it did do have critics. I can't remember. I think it did have critics, but it's one of them where, because I didn't mind her in this, but I'm not a massive fan of the character. You're right, animated series Harley is great, but that's when she's with the Joker and they can do that stuff. But because they have to take on the 2016 Harley, and I feel as if they're trying to strip it back to try and take as much of that bad stuff away from it. But it doesn't matter how much they do continuity-wise. There's always going to be tattoos. You see the one there, the whole film.
Daddy's
Is
little
there a couple
monster,
on
whatever it was, or property.
Property. There's the one on the back, and I think Margot Robbie's great. I think she is one of those. I don't want to. I mean, she's only played it 3 times, so I'm not going to sort of do like a low-key Iron Man type thing. But when the next 5-10 years go by, however many times she plays the character, I think she wants to break from it for a bit because she did Birds of Prey back-to-back with Suicide Squad in that same character, which is probably. I mean, we know what's like playing the Joker, so it might be something similar. So
she probably doesn't want to get typecast as an actress as well.
Exactly.
Whether she's at that point, I don't think she's quite at that point yet. But
no, she's got a lot of Oscar noms. She's done a lot of
Yeah.
other things, so I think she's safe. I know she's going into producing as well, so she's one of them that's I think quite safe of it. But I definitely think they got the best out of her in a supporting role. I just think for the eternity of Margot Robbie playing her, unfortunately, because of one choice 5 years ago, she will always have to have that connection. I know it sounds silly, so of course the character should be connected, but when you are literally connected via tattoos that are permanent, they have to be there in every portrayal of that character. And I think they're doing as well as they can. Have you noticed more in like Birds of Prey, she had like different clothes on like long sleeves because they just wanted to get rid of showing all of it. And in this film, obviously, you know, they try it as much as they can, but it's a really weird one because I don't mind her in it, but I think you can't really detach Harley from the Joker, and I think they're doing the best they can at detaching her from the Joker, but it doesn't help when they bring back the moron for a 1 minute extended cameo crap in the Snyder Cut. So I'm in a weird one of Harley. I don't know.
I think, I mean, she nails the character in pretty much every performance she does, even in the Suicide Squad. Like we've all said, she is a standout character in that. And I completely understand the direction they're taking and trying to distance her from the Joker. I think the Joker was given as like almost a throwaway line in the Birds of Prey film of like, oh, we broke up, and then she gets angry, and then that's kind of all they really mention of it in the entire film. There's not really much tying that character back to that. And I think they're happy that they've gone, okay, that aside now, we can kind of put her into this film and kind of keep it like that. But I feel like, yeah, you've still got the kind of the tattoos there, and it'll always be kind of a background thing for that. But I think they're trying to focus as heavily away from that as possible. They've changed her hairstyle completely from what it was in that first Suicide Squad film. And as far as kind of her lines are concerned, they feel, dare I say, more in character, and it's building on the role, and she's given a lot more screen time, and she's even given relationship in this film, kind of in a microcosm of the film itself. So it shows that she has moved on from that, even if the tattoos are still there and visible. Maybe it's a kind of thing of if they covered her up completely and you couldn't see the tattoos and stuff like that, it would be okay, we're never going back to it. But maybe they're just keeping that around just kind of for continuity reasons, and also because if they did want to bring the Joker back in, like as maybe even a villain for the Suicide Squad, it could close out an entire circle for Harley Quinn in the end if they wanted to go in that direction. But as far as kind of the film in itself, she does excellent, including the scene of her breaking out, which I think was absolutely fantastic, with kind of the candy flowers and stuff like that flying off when she's killing people. I thought that was such a fun scene. I knew I'd seen it in the trailer. I thought, okay, so as I'm watching the film, this is going to be the scene where she kind of kills people and breaks out. And it's just so well shot and so well done. But yeah, memorable moment from the film.
Yeah, I was going to mention that as well. I think, you know, I mentioned the King Shark scene as well with the tank. There's some beautiful visuals in this film, and two of them include Harley Quinn. Number one is the bit with all the flowers. I thought that was really creative. And again, it's just nice to see a filmmaker being allowed to make the film they want to make with all the crazy visuals and the wonderful colors that go along with it. And I mean, there was plenty of violence in the film before that point, so I didn't know if that was done as like a censorship thing, because she just massacres an entire room of people. And if that was real blood, that would be horrific.
The way she sees the world.
Well, exactly. It was perfect. It was visual. It was, you know, why we go and see films. It's just where you get creative with the imagery that you put on, you know, that you showcase your scenes with. And the other one is at the very end where she stabs into the eye of Starro, and she's in kind of like the fluid of the eye, and all the rats come in, and it's just this beautiful visuals going on with this film. And I mean, it's someone who stabbed a giant eyeball and rats are swimming into it. Like it's a horrible, disgusting image in reality, but in a film, it looks absolutely gorgeous. So I think it's quite refreshing as well. And you know, this depends how you depict the character, but it's refreshing to get a Harley Quinn where they haven't hypersexualized her as well. I guess you could kind of see that with Birds of Prey. They were getting away from that, and they've kind of made the character just as it is. I know that sometimes Harley uses that as a weapon, and that's totally fine. That she can. That's like another weapon to her arsenal, really. That she has that allure and attraction. But the first Suicide Squad film was all about that shit. Like when she was doing that kind of Cirque du Soleil thing in the cage, you know, and the way that they presented the character. I think even in the trailer, the short shorts, for God's sake, like the bit where she like bends forward, and there was just a lot of that in that first film, and it seemed like that was all the character was. You know, she was being sort of like pimped out by the Joker. It's such an awful characterization of what they did with Joker and Harley in that first film. I can't get over it. But it's nice to see that they're kind of stepping away from that a little bit and letting Harley just be who she is. As I say, I don't think it's perfect. I'm not singing its praises completely. I still don't think the writing's that great on her, but I do think it's a darn sight better of what than the 2 times that we've had before.
Very quickly extended onto that. I do want to point out she does keep a running gag, which I quite liked as well, with the whole Milton thing. Who's Milton?
That was funny for a moment, but I felt like they kind of drove that into the ground a little bit. Like it seemed like it's that Family Guy humor where it drags on a little bit too long for me. I thought it was just funny in the lineup where there's the random guy and you notice this random guy who's with them. I think if they'd have mentioned it once and moved on, it would have been funny, but it seems like they kind of beat the dead horse with that one a little bit, I think.
It's when it comes back when the job's done. And it's like, oh, you're Milton. I was like, like, really? So I didn't mind the whole like talking. The talk when he's dead. Again, it's Polka Dot Man. It's like he's been with us the entire time. I don't mind the thing like that. Like, do it one scene, but don't bring it back at the end again because it's just a bit odd. And although it did make me think, I was like, wait, Hotel was not called Milton, is he? I'm not losing the plot here, am I? But he's not. Luckily, thank God. I don't even know what to talk about next. I pretty much covered most.
I just want to move on to Polka Dot Man, if that's the case, because Polka Dot Man had something which I wasn't expecting. I don't think anyone was expecting. I don't know if it's been ever a part of his characterization at all. But the whole thing of everyone he sees being his mother, like the first time I saw it, the club scene, I was like, oh God, that's grim. And then Starro just being a giant version of his mother. Brilliant, really well paid off kind of joke that went through the entire film. But also when you think about it, an absolutely horrifying experience for him, kind of the trauma that's being placed upon him, that he now has this kind of fucked up superpower that kind of backfires all the time. And also he's living with kind of indented memory of his mum who tortured him the entire time, and everyone he sees having that face. Like, that's a horrific backstory, but it's played off for comedy, which I think is exactly what James Gunn does with his films.
It's the uncomfortable comedy as well, isn't it? Which we were talking about, and it happens so much in this film. And God, that was so uncomfortable. The club scene, I think that was probably everyone was squirming in their seats at that. That was nasty. I guess we can sort of end with where we think the future of this franchise is. Just talking about DC. Oh, go on. Sorry. Yep.
The death of Rick Flag. Really want to quickly speak.
Oh yes, God, Christ, I forgot about him.
So, kind of what I said earlier. If you get into this film, you'd expect Rick Flag to die first, and Boomerang to get longer on. And I think keeping Flag alive was quite smart, because when we get his death, you care for him, which is something I don't think I would. It was well done, but also it's the not passing of the torch. But he's always been Amanda Waller's man, right? He's always been her guy, and we know that it's going to be John Cena. Peacemaker's always doing stuff on the side. This is the transition of power, I think, to down the line. That it's like Joel Kinnaman, like, we've given you longer than you probably would have had, but we're going to end things here. And I liked the fight scene, but one of my favorite shots I've ever seen for a fight scene, it was so unique, was the helmet.
Yes,
when they're fighting around the helmet. I've not seen anything like that before, and I'm really curious to see if that was captured in frame or if there was CGI involved. But I would have happily had the entire fight on a revolving helmet, because there's nothing like it as far as I'm aware.
No, I completely agree with you as well. It was so inventive in the way that they were able to do that, and it was such kind of a pinnacle fight scene. Like, it'd been kind of building up, and you were expecting there to be kind of a bigger fight scene between Bloodsport and Peacemaker. But that whole thing of, like, him being Amanda Waller's man, and then the entire mission kind of being put on to Peacemaker, because obviously Rick Flag was in the first team. He was meant to die. Like, he wasn't meant to be there at the end. That was meant to be Peacemaker going in and just completing the mission without anyone else finding out. And that entire thing of, oh, well, now you've got Amanda Waller's, who he still thinks is Amanda Waller's right-hand man and is doing the right thing in his own right, kind of being like that entire barricade of what Peacemaker had been given as a mission. It just came to a really good head, and just the fight scene itself and kind of the brutalness of seeing the shard go into his heart and stuff like that. Just really, really well played off, and a good fitting finale for his character.
I like the stakes over that fight between him and Peacemaker. It kind of reminded me of Watchmen a little bit, at the very end of Watchmen, where they're sort of debating whether to unleash all this information for the sake of the people and the freedom, or is it lesser evil to keep everyone in the dark on it. So I like what they were fighting over. I thought that was really good. I've just never cared about Rick Flag. I didn't care about him in the first film, and I sure as hell didn't care about him in this one. I think when you've got a lineup of all these colourful, wacky characters, Peacemaker, Harley Quinn, even Bloodsport, and a lot of the other people, he gets overshadowed, and he gets overshadowed because he's the straight man. You know, he doesn't have any powers. He's just sent there to kind of babysit the team, essentially. But I don't feel like he had loads to do in this film, and then all of a sudden he had everything to do when he was fighting Peacemaker. But by that point, I just didn't care about his character. And I don't know if that's so much of a carryover from the previous film, in that I just never really got a good sense of him, or that he wasn't as charismatic as a lot of the other characters and a lot of the other actors in the film. So I didn't really feel sad when he died, but I do like the circumstances that they were fighting over, and thought that was a good bit of characterization for him. But it came way too late, and came literally right before he died. So, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I'm glad you mentioned the helmet scene as well, because that was standout for me. I would have loved the whole fight scene to have been in the helmet. I thought that would have been cool. Anything else to talk about this thing, or should we talk about sort of like the future of the franchise, the IP that is DC? It's just all over the place. Yeah, go on.
I'm going to jump in. Clean reset. Let James Gunn direct a Justice League film, and I'll be happy.
Ooh.
I know that's jumping. Just reset it. Let him cast them. Let him make a film. Let him do it. Don't even care if it's connected. At this point in time, if DC want their guy, if he was coming back for Suicide Squad, I reckon they'd have said it. They're saying he will. They said he will be doing another DC film. It might not be Justice League. It probably isn't. But I'm saying if they want to do it properly, that is your guy that can make it look like the comics, which has been DC's problem.
I don't think
that's too big. Yeah, I think that's too big.
I think the way this works is in the same way that Guardians of the Galaxy. It's characters you've never heard of that are kind of made to be heard of. It's kind of giving like household names to characters that never should have had household names, and getting that kind of uncanny, that weird, that wackiness into the film. I think that works perfectly fine for James Gunn. I don't think I think Justice League is almost too serious. This is the silly version of Justice League using the villains, whereas Justice League needs to be kind of a bit more severity, in the same way that I don't think James Gunn should direct an Avengers film, because that's the big team, that's the main team. You can have different elements thrown in, like in the way that Guardians of the Galaxy were used in Endgame, but that was still directed by the Russos, and it was still a lot more serious. He was brought in for kind of the characterization and the dialogue and stuff like that. But having that entire thing directed in that style, and having him talking over the characters and the screen direction and everything like that, I think it would just not work for that main team, especially with the universe they've already set up. And even though we complain about the universe that DC has set up pretty much every single film that they bring out, I do think there is kind of solid enough ground to move forwards with some of the characterizations and some of the characters. Obviously, Batman's getting his own kind of side film, which is completely off track from where they're going to be going with these films. I think Ben Affleck's back for the Flash movie or something like that. So there's going to be two different Batmans. If you're sticking with the Batman in universe here, even though it's a long film, I think Justice League has set up enough to kind of continue on that steady, like same vein. And it's bad to say that we're doubling down on a subpar medium film, but the fact that they've got some things right in there, like Wonder Woman, I think some parts of Aquaman worked. I think some different characterizations in Justice League worked as well. I think you've got enough there to build off. I don't think you need to just go clean slate, complete reset, especially because there are so many resets happening. Like we have Batman films with Nolan, we have Batman films with the DCEU, and then we have Batman films with Matt Reeves coming in. Having another reset on top of that for any of the characters that are involved, I just don't think would work at this stage. They've gone too far in. They need to kind of push through and see if they can get to a point where maybe they can explore different areas and regions and different storylines. But James Gunn, bring him back for Suicide Squad, but I don't think a Justice League would work.
I've got an idea of what he could do. And I've just looked. Oh, go on, sorry. Yeah.
Really, what I'll say, Flash is going to reset all of DC, though.
They're getting there. But
that's what I'm saying. I reckon he could do it. I reckon he could do it properly. But long-term DC, they got 3 Batmen. We're getting the return of Ben Affleck for the final time for 1 month of filming, apparently.
Oh God,
we're getting, of course, Michael Keaton coming back in the same film.
Flashpoint
And
resets
we've obviously
everything,
got Robert Pattinson, who at the moment hopefully stays as his own
In his own
trilogy,
thing.
like
doesn't it?
Nolan.
So question: if we have Flashpoint, does that suddenly mean that the
Nothing is off the table.
Jesus,
I don't think it will.
Yeah.
I don't think it will. I've read Matt Reeves' full creative control like Nolan on his Batman trilogy.
Okay, that's good.
So fingers crossed. Sorry, Chris.
So
Yeah.
here's my pitch of what I want James Gunn to direct next in the DCEU. So I agree with Tate that it needs to be something more self-contained. He works better when he works on the smaller scale stuff, like the Guardians of the Galaxy, kind of like an offshoot of Marvel, very similar to the Suicide Squad is kind of an offshoot of the Justice League stuff and Batman. I pitch a Legion of Doom film directed by James Gunn. Now, I'm going to read really quickly the lineup of the characters, but this could be amazing, especially you'd have some carryovers from people that have been in the DCEU before, but under a new director, a new tone, it could work really well. And you'd have a bunch of new characters and some wacky characters as well. So Legion of Doom, and it ties in with the post-credit scene of Justice League, if that's even still a thing. I think it's time that we put together a Legion, a team of our own, or whatever Jesse Eisenberg says to Deathstroke at the end. So it's led by Lex Luthor, but I think under James Gunn's direction, I think Jesse Eisenberg could work really well. You've got the Joker. Depends if you want Jared Leto back. Scarecrow, Cheetah, so returning. Bane, Gorilla Grodd, Black Manta, Sinestro, Black Adam, who's getting his film, so you'd have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in there. The Reverse Flash, Toyman, that's got to be a wacky character, right? Solomon Grundy, literally, there's your big lumbering character who barely says any words. Metallo, Captain Cold, Parasite, Riddler, Penguin, Two-Face, Man-Bat, Calendar Man could return. Killer Croc, returning from the previous Suicide Squad film. Killer Frost, Felix Faust, and Livewire. That's a film I want to see by James Gunn. That lineup, maybe don't do all of them. I know Penguin you've got in the Matt Reeves films. Get rid of him, but that would be great.
Suicide Squad versus Legion of Doom.
There you go.
Guess who would make a great Bane under James Gunn? Big Dave.
Oh, yes. Yeah. There we go. That's the film. That has to be the film.
I'm sold. I could see it. Because I don't even know he sent a tweet out, so he's not voicing Drax in the What If show. And someone tweeted him. He goes, his reply was, "Well, they didn't ask me." And James Gunn's reply was like, "What?" ? So I think after Guardians 3, they're on their way out the whole cast. But
Batista's
put it here
working with
first.
Zack Snyder if he wants to produce still as well. So
if we get a Legion of Doom film, as Chris said, and we get Drax's Batista, that is 2 bets, and we'll take them as exclusives. Thank you. We'll somehow tweet this out to people to see. But I can see it. Now you've said Legion of Doom. That is his kind of film.
Take this clip and then just tweet it out as soon as it's done, and have a timestamp.
Yeah, tweet this to James Gunn like he has a decision in this matter and not all the higher ups.
This is the 7th of August, 2021. You heard it here first, folks.
Calling it. Bring in Joe Manganiello, whatever his name is, as Deathstroke. Bring him in it.
Yeah.
Pick him up. Why not?
He might be Spider-Man this year at this rate because they're all coming back. So maybe he'll be returning as Flash. But now you've said that. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I want to see Legion of Doom. I think he'd enjoy that probably more than Justice League 2. Because any director that does another Justice League film is going to get massacred on Twitter for the next 20 years by the nutcases. I won't tweet this. I won't tweet that clip though. But yeah, is there anything? I mean, sort of with the way it is with James Gunn as well. That I know it sounds really bad. Like normally with comic book films, right? You get your Nolans. It's like great. He's done his 3. Move on. Because you've now got the budget at your disposal and the reputation to do whatever the hell you want to do. I think a lot of directors do things like that. Whereas I think James Gunn, as I said earlier, he's one of them directors that he loves it. And it's like the better films I do in the comic book stuff, I'm going to be able to come back and do more of them. You know, the fact that we speak about how bad 2016's Suicide Squad is, they tried to make it Guardians of the Galaxy in post-production. And the answer was there all along. Just hire the guy that did Guardians of the Galaxy, and they did. So I'm going to say once again, second time around review, thank you to the Nutcase Trump supporters that got him cancelled temporarily for 2 weeks. Because we got this film out of it, which probably meant DC was always waiting. Whether or not they've been in talks for, I don't know. But it's one of them where now I look back at this film, I'm never going to have to see that. I'm never going to see it again anyway, the 2016 one. But this is one that I can't wait to see again. I've seen it twice at the cinema already. I will pick it up on Blu-ray. And it'll be, I think, one of the very few DC films that I own out there's 11 of them in this little DCE I think.
Oh God, is there? Jesus Christ!
I think I own 1 of them or 2 of them at the moment. But it's one of them I want to see it again. And Peacemaker's coming out in January. The perfect prelude is going to be this film going into a show for 8 episodes, And I'm excited to see what he does next. Even if it's not Marvel, I mean, we know it's Marvel, but even if after Guardians he didn't do a DC property again straight away, I think he's built up enough of reputation now to do what he wants. That being said, I really want to talk really quick about the box office. So it's going to open with 40 million in America this weekend, which is rated R, and it's a pandemic, and it's been released on HBO Max. Nutcase Snyder supporters are saying, haha, this has failed. We knew a Marvel person would never like all this nonsense. And they're trying to compare it to the original one. The difference is that the original was PG in America, isn't it? It's either PG or rated R. And this isn't going to be a smash hit. I think it's going to be a cult film. Not even cult film. It's going to be a big hit, but this is a hard sell to a lot of people to go to the cinema, I feel, especially when you can get it at home built into your subscription. And I think this is a really good time to reflect on the awful HBO Max model. That won't be there for next year. They're taking such a hit this year to push HBO Max. I mean, it's incredible that you'll be able to watch this film at home, but it's such a shame because the way it was shot, I don't know if anyone here saw it in IMAX, but he shot it in IMAX aspect ratio. So it wasn't with IMAX cameras, but at the IMAX, it filled the entire screen. You didn't get the black bars top and bottom. So it was one of them where all of the cast have said, like, please go watch it at the cinema. And just a sort of industry point at the moment is obviously in America, the Delta virus is starting to take off over there. So it's really interesting to see the box office numbers because this is very well over here in England for its opening weekend, especially with the age rating. So I don't want anyone that's watching this to be forward into thinking this is some kind of flop. 185 million blockbuster being released for free online with piracy. You ain't getting a hit out of that. Doesn't matter what country and what franchise it is. Look at Black Widow. It's made 330 mil worldwide, whereas Fast Nine's made 650 million. That difference is because you're putting it online for people to torrent after less than 1 hour.
And I guarantee, even though this was shot in IMAX aspect ratio, when this thing comes out on Blu-ray, you're not going to have black bars at either side. I think it will. You'll still get a full screen. So, Snyder, take note of how to do your aspect ratios. Thank you very much. Final thoughts for me. I thought I had a lot of fun with this. I don't think it's perfect. I think it could have done with maybe a bit tightening up with the script in some areas with certain characters that I felt were wasted, and not all the jokes landed for me, but the thing that I took away from it the most is that I love the visual style of it. It looks gorgeous as a film. It's wacky, it's zany. You can tell that James Gunn loves making comic book films and that he's a fan of the comic book. There's even moments I didn't even talk about where text would come on the screen, which initially I was kind of against. It would say like, meanwhile, ... But then as the film goes on, it's literally like panels from a comic book. So you can tell that he absolutely loves the world that he's based in, that he had a lot of fun with this. And I imagine that the stories with the cast as well on set would be a lot of fun as well, making this film. I'd love to see another one. I think it's in the right hands. They struck the right tone with this one. So yeah, it's entertaining. It's fun. If you haven't checked it out and you can, go and watch it at the cinema.
Definitely. I'll add to that. I'm still on the high horse. I still think when the time comes, at some point in this year, I'm going to re-rank every comic book film I've ever seen in one list. And I think this is top 10. If it's not, it's going to be 10 to 15. This is, I think, absolute top tier. The second viewing really helped. It's a bit like Guardians. I loved Guardians 1 the first time. Second viewing is like, this is still incredible. Third viewing is still incredible. I felt like that with this one. I think this one's going to deliver on repeat viewings. And I think long-term, this is going to be one people speak about for many years. So it's a very interesting one at the moment. As I said, it's only been out a week, so I might look like an idiot in 2 years' time. But and nothing but praise from me. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to spoil this because you haven't seen it. But there are a lot of people, though, that commented on Jungle Cruise, they didn't like it, which was a bit sad. But obviously, I'm not gonna go for them during a Jungle Cruise review. But yeah, it's very interesting seeing other people's reaction to it. There you go, comment by Carl. I may not like the film, but definitely see it on a cinema screen if you're going to go see it. Exactly that. And again, the industry needs people in seats at cinemas, need to start making money so they can make more films. And Warner Brothers have lost many directors because of that.
I think going into my final thoughts as well, I think the reason why people may not go see this film, not only because they have the access online, but because the first film put such a black marker on it for a lot of people. People were expecting, oh, this is going to be a fantastic film, oh, Suicide Squad, like legendary comic and stuff like that. And then it just did not deliver on any of the kind of levels that it did. The only thing that's kind of lasted from that is Harley Quinn, and I guess the kind of Joker memes that people still, like, surprised by this, people still put up on Facebook and Twitter of like the whole Jared Leto Joker and stuff like that. That's the legacy that film has, other than being just a terrible film, and that may put people off going, oh, well, it's just the same film, they've just added the at the start. But the fact that this is the Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad, the Suicide Squad that you should go and watch. I think that plays out perfectly well in that same sense. And I love this film. This film is great. I've still only seen it once, but just kind of in the week afterwards of kind of thinking about it more and stuff like that, it just makes me want to go and see it again, just because of the absolute absurd silliness of it. It needs to be silly. It's a stupid concept in the first place. The film should be stupid in its own right. I think what James Gunn has done here is just absolutely perfect for this. Will it make top 10? Maybe. Repeat viewings, it might possibly creep in. But the fact that we're praising a DC film this highly, and the fact that we're all on the same page about it, we all enjoyed it in its own aspects and stuff like that, shows that people should go and see this film in a cinema. And if you don't have the access to cinema, then yeah, sure, go see it at home. If you enjoy it at home, then go see it in the cinema.
Warner Brothers, let your filmmakers make the films they want to make. That's why they're called filmmakers. Although we've had a Wonder Woman film, we've had a Zack Snyder Justice League, so take that for what it is.
Just studios don't interfere with films.
Yeah, but
no matter how good or bad they are, this is the next. Well, no, I say that
if it's bad, that's on the filmmaker. Yeah.
Yes, it's like Netflix, right? Netflix just needs to stop accepting and funding so many bad films, whereas Warner Brothers need to say, yes, we're in, we will buy into your filmmaking, not you're in, but we're going to change it because the times are changing elsewhere. But yeah, just as a reflection, just let them make their films. As we said, Wonder Woman 2 was terrible. I'm not a fan. Still remember it. What is next for DC? Sorry, really random. What's the next DCEU film?
I guess the Batman. That's not DCEU, is it?
This is what I'm thinking.
The Flash.
Black Adam. Yes, Black Adam. Black Adam and Flash. Black Adam will be
might be out first, isn't it? I think
Flash is 2022, isn't it?
That's filming now. Black Adam's wrapped, so I'd imagine both of them are going to come next year.
Black
Adam, I'm very intrigued. No, isn't Shazam 2 filming as well? Okay, so, maybe there's a couple of things on the way.
So it's an absolute clusterfuck. What's going on?
We don't even know, and normally we know.
Here we go. I'll tell you now. Black Adam's first one out. That's July 29th, 2022. Then you've got The Flash, November 4th, 2022, and Aquaman, December 16th, 2022. Yeah. So really close to each other. Then you've got Shazam, 2022. So
there's still other things in motion. Well, the best thing is Batman's coming out in March, starring Robert Pattinson. So that's, I guess, DC wise. I don't know if we're going to cover Peacemaker. We haven't discussed anything yet, but the next DC thing is probably going to be Peacemaker or Batman on the channel, and that's going to be something special. Hopefully, the Batman. I'd imagine we'll get a trailer at some point towards the end of this year. I don't know if they're doing another DC fandom. If they are, maybe we'll get it there again.
I want to see what other edgy Nirvana song they're going to use in the trailer. I'm hyped. I can't wait for that film. But yeah, that'll do it for our spoiler discussion on the Suicide Squad. And as always, we open it up to you guys now. So please comment below with your thoughts on the Suicide Squad. We have had a few people commenting along tonight, so thank you for tuning in. But if you are discovering this video now and you've listened to us waffle on for over 90 minutes on the Suicide Squad, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts. Did you like the film? Didn't you like the film? Did you think it was an improvement on 2016? Or maybe you're in the minority and you actually like the 2016 one, because I think there are a few out there that do. Anything Suicide Squad related or DC, please do let us know. George, what else do we have coming up on the channel? I mean, it's nice that we're getting new releases. I mean, this is kind of a big deal. We haven't had any for a long time, and I think we're starting to keep that momentum with new releases. So we're going to be here for those, but we also do have some other stuff coming out too.
Absolutely. So, apologies, my internet dropped out, so hopefully I'm in sync. The next big one isn't actually a new film. It's the one and the only. It's GoldenEye this Tuesday, the 10th of August. We're in the Brosnan era now. We're in the end game almost. So if you're into your Bond film, check that out. New releases, though, it's not a bit dry. There's a couple of smaller films coming out because they're all scared of Bond in September. So there's going to be a review out for the first episodes of What If at some point this week. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I don't know what else there is. Sorry, it's going off the top of my head. There might be a Johnny Depp film review as well, Minamata. I don't know dates or anything, but I can say for 100% definitely sure there is going to be a review of the Bad Batch whole season 1 next Saturday night, which is the 14th. It's going to be a kind of review / discussion on the series as a whole. So if you've been watching the Bad Batch, that is the place to be. Aside from that, I actually need to check a schedule because I need to check the cinema releases to find out what the hell is going on.
There'll be something. We're not going anywhere. There'll be films coming out, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But yeah, we'll still be here. So this will do it for us tonight. Thank you to everyone who's been in the chat commenting along, as always. And until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.